Good afternoon or morning, everybody. Welcome back to another tropical forecast here on soon-to-be Hurricane Zeta, as it is at 70 miles an hour and it's expected to become hurricane extremely soon before its landfall for the Yucatan Peninsula later tonight. Speaking of the Yucatan Peninsula, hurricane warnings have been issued for areas around the Cancun area up in the peninsula, as well for the Yucatan Canal, as well bringing those tropical storm warnings for western Cuba, and is expected to take aim for a portion of Louisiana and Mississippi for a landfall early this week here. That's exactly what we're looking at midweek around that Wednesday time frame, Tuesday-ish, kind of merging into Wednesday, and expected to possibly make a landfall as a Category 1 landfall and bring in some significant flooding, some minimal storm surge as well. But it's exactly, we're going to be looking at the models, what it can get to strength-wise, who's at risk. We'll be taking a look at the hurricane warnings and everybody else, and kind of including the Gulf Coast as well. Before you get in the video, though, please subscribe if you're new and hit the like button and post notification icon. I will try to have another video out once it becomes officially a hurricane, maybe by the kind of late afternoon hours, and I will have another video on most likely this. But without further ado, let's get this video. So here's at the look at the National Hurricane Center update. This is actually 11 a.m. update here, so this is really new. As you see, there it is, advisory number 8 on Zeta or Zeta. It is at 70 miles an hour. So like I said, it's getting really close to becoming a Category 1 here, and it will be a hurricane landfall for the Yucatan Peninsula, which obviously this will be the third tropical system to hit the Yucatan Peninsula this month. First we had Gamma, now we had obviously Delta, and now Zeta. All three Greeks hit this general area there in Cancun. But there it is at minimal center pressure, 992 millibars. So it has dropped quite significantly. Last time I checked, or last time on my video, it was 1,004, and now it is at 992. So it has dropped just less than 20 millibars there, and is now moving northwest at 10 miles an hour. So it is speeding up quite significantly since it was actually basically stalling yesterday here. But let's take a look now at the IR brightness here. As you do see, there we got that low pressure really starting to blow up there with that center convection there. That low pressure is just to the kind of the little northern part of that convection there. So we have kind of mainly all that convection. Those tropical storm winds are to the south of that low pressure. This low pressure is a bit more north, that convection, and where that convection is, that's where we have the tightest vorticity. Which means it's going to get a ton of, that's going to increase the winds in that general area here. But I can kind of do see, we definitely have some nice outflow in the stretching band of that northern side of the low pressure there. Also some nice banding on the western side of this low pressure. We're trying to organize this eastern side here with trying to get some banding there, that low pressure. So I can kind of see it is definitely trying to get its act together. Let's check out now. Let's check out the satellite imagery on visible, so you can actually see it on satellite, not IR. It's actually the satellite, and I kind of see that recent blow up in convection, trying to get to probably its dural maximum, which it was kind of doing at this time again yesterday. And you can see that recent blow up there in convection there. It's trying to expand its growth, expand its strength. And that's exactly what we will find out in the coming recons throughout today. But there it is, like I did say, you got some nice outflow right there. Seems like you're getting some nice inflow through this right there. We're getting some really nice inflow, and that's why we have some defining banding. That's why we have that defining banding, because of that inflow on the eastern side. So it is looking pretty organized for a tropical storm. Obviously, we've had a lot more organized tropical storms this year. we've also had a lot less organized tropical storms this year. It's kind of like on the verge of looking pretty normal. It's not impressive looking, but it's also not like embarrassing looking. But here's looking now at the SST temperatures. As you can see, this low pressure is now right here going through the most favorable waters so far, basically in the western Atlantic, other than the areas right here near Trinidad and Tobago. This is kind of right there. There's really warm waters, 30 degrees Celsius. But since it is now really starting to speed up, expected strength will kind of calm down a little bit. It won't be strengthening as fast as it was yesterday throughout last night. But it's still going to be gaining some strength here. Like I did say, it will become a hurricane before hitting Yucatan. It could very well be. I believe the National Hurricane Center is calling for 85 miles an hour. So that's still a 15-mile-an-hour strength. And it is expected to possibly make landfall for eastern Louisiana, just to the east of New Orleans. So New Orleans, areas like Hattiesburg, Gulfport, you guys can get some big impacts here. So chances for Florida and Alabama has really minimized. But it's going to be heading out for the Louisiana and Mississippi area. So they're going to be making landfall just around that October 28th, 29th time frame, kind of overnight into Wednesday. And that's going to bring in some really heavy downpours throughout Wednesday and Thursday for portions of the southeast here. The only thing is we have some cooler waters, just like what happened with Sally. Sally did weaken slightly before landfall because of those cold waters. So in order to have it to withstand a tropical low, you need a waters above 26 degrees Celsius. It has to be over 26 to withstand a tropical system, especially if it's going to be a hurricane. So if it was a tropical storm right now, exceptions will be 25, maybe 24 is an exception for a really weak and disorganized tropical storm. But once you get to the hurricane status, you need to be over 26 degrees Celsius to withstand it and keep it from weakening significantly. And that's what we're going to be seeing for most of the Gulf until we get to this point right here, about 50 to 60 miles off the coast of the Gulf Coast. We are going to be seeing 26 to 24 degrees Celsius. So it could see some slight to moderate weakening before the landfall. But, I mean, it's going to slightly weaken, not much really. But like I did say, that the tropical storm winds and obviously the convection is really all to the south of that low pressure. The low pressure is kind of more to the northwest of all that convection there. And there it's expected to make landfall around kind of that around 5 p.m., 7 p.m. time frame. It's going to be around maybe 7 p.m., maybe even 9 p.m. latest. So it's going to be making landfall really late today. Later in the overnight hours, but there we got those hurricane warnings. This is the third time we've had hurricane warnings in these areas this month. The third time we've had tropical storm warnings for the Western Caribbean area. I mean, we're just seeing a pattern here. We're seeing a October pattern. Obviously, Gamma, obviously like that. Delta, obviously like that. Or more like that. That was Delta. And then we got this going like this. I mean, this is like the third strike. It is a third strike for these general areas of the Yucatan Canal, Yucatan Peninsula. Expected to obviously come out of Mexico around 7 a.m. tomorrow, so we'll be entering the Gulf once again by tomorrow morning. So it's not going to be over Mexico too long here. And of course, expected to slightly weaken. It's going to slightly weaken, only around 5 to 10 miles an hour by the time it arrives in the Gulf. And by the time it makes landfall in Louisiana as a hurricane there around 7 p.m. Tuesday. So it'll be making landfall tomorrow evening. So it's gonna be starting to gain its speed here. So like I did say, it's gonna kind of make that landfall between that Wednesday, between that Thursday time frame there. So not tomorrow. Wednesday, not tomorrow. Why did I think today was Tuesday? Sorry, it makes landfall not tomorrow evening. Sorry. Makes landfall Wednesday evening. It makes landfall this evening and then Wednesday evening. I don't know why. I was thinking today was Tuesday for a slight second. Okay, so it makes landfall there for Mexico tonight around the evening hours, 7 to maybe 9 p.m. I don't see it making landfall after midnight. It should definitely be tonight. Then it's throughout tomorrow. It's going to be in the Gulf of Mexico. And it makes landfall Wednesday evening around 7 p.m. Could be, again, the same time. It could be the same situation, maybe 7 to 10 p.m. But getting into that Thursday time frame, it's going to be it's going to be definitely an overnight issue for those areas in the Gulf Coast. And they're going to go over areas like Montgomery and Birmingham. At a tropical storm. It's going to go right over my house, actually. It's expected to go almost like right over my house. And they are predicting 45 miles an hour for me. So maybe I can get some great footage there. And it's still going to be a post-tropical storm all the way up into the New York City area, just obviously off the coast. So going to be seeing some widespread impacts all the way from Mexico to the areas in the New England area. Going to definitely see that heavy rain that's going to cause and maybe some bigger risk for power outages since the soil is going to be extremely wet. 45 miles an hour is definitely enough to do some damage, especially for those really populated areas with trees like we saw with Faye, areas in northern New Jersey. It brought, extreme issues with power outages. But we do see, obviously, this did actually go southward, so that actually is the reason why it's going to be making landfall deeply into the Cancun, or deeply into the Yucatan area. If it were not to go southward, it would have gone like this and probably just miss Cancun and then make landfall for Alabama. So if it did not go more south, it could have hit Alabama. It definitely could have, but since it's now been found way more to the south, that means it's going to keep that west-northwestern turn, and it's going to be a lot more to the west. So that's exactly why it went from Alabama to Louisiana that quickly. Okay, so there it is, making landfall there as a hurricane. Going to come out as a 75-mile-an-hour hurricane. Obviously, then slightly weakened, and then strengthened back to 80 miles an hour. So it's going to become 80 miles an hour, and then again slightly weakened once again. It's going to slightly weaken 5 and then 5 again. So that's around 10 miles an hour, and then but it does regain strength at 80 miles an hour. Then it makes landfall as a 75-mile-an-hour hurricane for New Orleans. So it's going to be a borderline tropical storm. So for those people who've lived in New Orleans or Louisiana and Mississippi coast for the past few years, that's nothing. But it's still a hurricane, so I would take precautions. It's really up to you if you want to evacuate. It is basically a borderline tropical storm, so it's not too significant compared to what Louisiana has seen so far this year with obviously Delta and Laura. But it's really up to the people there. And then it becomes 40 miles an hour there for Alabama. Goes kind of straight to the north of Atlanta. They're predicting 45-mile-an-hour gusts for my general area, maybe even higher maximum wind gusts, maybe to 50. So I will definitely try to get some coverage there. And I do see there it is making landfall for the Yucatan Peninsula, going west-northwest, and then slightly making its voyage to the north in the Gulf of Mexico, and then it starts to do that sharp northeastern turn. We see that very frequently. We've obviously seen that with Laura. We've seen that with Sally. We've seen it with Delta itself. It's really frequent that northern, that kind of that pattern where it just goes like that, really. It's been very frequent this year. All the models kind of getting it just to the east of New Orleans, so kind of in that general area near Grand Isle where Marco supposedly hit the tropical depression. So it's kind of really just to the eastern Louisiana area. So we are having models kind of starting to really agree with each other. And then it's obviously to kind of go near areas near Hattiesburg, over Montgomery, Birmingham, go over the areas near Gainesville, Georgia, near Helen, those general areas in Rome, go over areas like Roanoke, Greensboro. So it's going to bring a ton of rain for these general areas as well. It's not just going to be a Gulf Coast event or a Mexico event. It's going to bring some flash flooding as well, far inland, just like we saw Sally, for example. And then the tropical Zeta model intensity guidance, as you do see there, sitting at 70 miles an hour. Expected to become a hurricane tonight, and they're going to be staying there and then really weakening once it gets near that Gulf Coast. So this is kind of like right once it makes landfall, it's going to just really weaken extremely fast. So like I did say, models are getting so slightly weakening in the Gulf and then strengthening back before landfall, and then weakening right before landfall again. So it's going to be, like I did say, slightly weakening, but it's going to kind of emerge itself, or it's going to redeem itself once it gets in the middle Gulf of Mexico. So here's looking at the GFS. There it is. They have it at 992 millibars for the next 6 hours. So they don't really have it weakening much or whatsoever pressure-wise. And then they show making landfall at 992 millibars in that time frame there. So they don't really have it weakening, or they don't really have it strengthening much, really, the GFS itself. And then there it is. They show it kind of strengthening throughout the Gulf of Mexico and making landfall at 980 millibars. So that's actually something really interesting, because 980 millibars is actually worth Category 2, obviously. So that's something to keep in mind there. I'm not saying keep it in mind as being a Category 2, but keep it in mind that they're actually getting it that low. But I would see, let's zoom into southeast. So this is actually going right over my house here. So for those who don't know, I kind of live right here. I can't obviously, because like the pen's so small and it's like so zoomed out. That's kind of the general area where I live. That's kind of the general area. You can kind of see it just goes like straight over my house there. It kind of cuts off right before it passes my house. So I'm definitely going to get some great footage here, hopefully, if it's going to be that significant, if it's going to be that close. especially what they're calling for. But there it is, 982 millibars. But let's check out the CMC as well. They are showing it being a lot weaker. And look at 1,000 millibars, 999, 1,000 millibar landfall. I mean, the CMC, I don't know if they're just living under a rock. I have no idea what's going on with the CMC. Icons, they're showing something really interesting as well. 979 millibar landfall. That is also worth category 2. So that's something really interesting here, that 2 global models that have been pretty on the storm are now getting to be in a category 2 millibar strength. Let's actually check out now 10 meter winds here. I mean, that's definitely something really interesting. Let's now zoom in once again. You can definitely see that. I mean, that's definitely extremely interesting here. You can kind of see that it is around, yeah, that's still around 70 or 80 miles an hour. So, but they do have pressure worth of 9. They do have pressure worth of category 2, which is 977 there. I mean, that's definitely worth category 2 central pressure. So, or minimal central pressure. I mean, that's something that we definitely got to keep in mind here, because I mean, of course, even with the shear and dry air and cooler waters in the Gulf Coast, still can get surprised by systems. So we've learned about that by Sally, we've learned it by Marco, we learned it by Delta, Laura, we've learned it by a lot of storms that have gone in the Gulf this year. So we can't treat this any different, but it doesn't mean we have to prepare the same as if it was going to blow up, because obviously this has a very small chance of becoming a category 2, but we will obviously keep in mind, because it is now speeding up, so the chance of that even becoming a category 2 has kind of gone down anyways, because it is speeding up and not on those warmer waters anymore. But we will check. Well, obviously, I'll make more videos and try to keep you guys updated. So here's looking now at the this is one of the GFS models here, the many GFS models we have, and I kind of do see there it is making landfall there in the general Mexico area at around 75-ish miles an hour, maybe even 80 miles an hour. That's what GFS is showing there. One of the many GFS models we have. And obviously, there it is, taking it straight for areas like Louisiana here. Really, really interesting what we're seeing. Let's actually zoom in into the Louisiana. Freaking out. There we go, Louisiana. Let's actually check out the New Orleans map. So you guys, if you live in the New Orleans area or eastern Louisiana, this is gonna be really close. So this is actually, let's actually, if I can zoom in, this is around 54 hours out. We're already going to be seeing some strong winds expected for these areas of eastern Louisiana near Grand Isle. Going to be seeing already around 40 or 50 miles an hour for portions of New Orleans. And then there you got really strong winds. That's kind of what this GFS is getting landfall right here, when the majority are getting it kind of like right here for landfall. But either way, the northeastern quadrant is going to bring the strongest winds to the east of New Orleans there. And then it's going to be bringing some really strong winds. But this is actually getting right over New Orleans landfall. This is actually right over New Orleans there. But going to bring it obviously around 85 miles an hour. And then obviously going to go deep into the roots of Alabama and those general areas. Now let's check out the southeast. This is another GFS model here. As we check it out, they're just kind of showing the similarities. Seem like they're really agreeing on that, making landfall in the general eastern Louisiana areas, and even going to bring it up to around 54 miles an hour gusts, 55 mile an hour gusts, even 60 mile an hour wind gusts. So this is actually 10 meter gusts, and it's going to bring gusts up to around 50 miles an hour for my general area there, and then going to bring it up to around 50 to 55 mile an hour gusts as well. It's even going to get higher gusts once it actually goes up and following the east coast. And last but not least, we're going to be checking out here the moisture. As you do see, it has developed quite a very well-developed moisture bubble. But look at all that dry air to the east and to the west of this low pressure. But it's going to really develop a nice moisture bubble. This is very impressive here. Obviously, dry air and shear was obviously a very big issue of mine before this actually became Zeta. But I mean, it's definitely gone. It's definitely forecasted to keep a very big moisture bubble, which was not forecasted at first. So does that mean we can see unexpected strengthening? I obviously, that is something we have to keep in mind, because the thing is that I was saying it's gonna kind of stay weaker because it is that shear and obviously the drier. But if it's gonna keep a bubble that organized, that was not expected to happen at first, then I think there is a chance this could slightly strengthen a bit more there. not necessarily category 2, but getting to the point where it could be 85 miles an hour or 80 miles an hour instead of a 75 mile an hour area. I mean, that's just what we're looking at. The only thing is there's going to be slight to the moderate amount of shear there following that low pressure, but it could obviously find a way to keep it out. But it's not really over that low pressure, but it is surrounding the vicinity of that low pressure, which obviously just can make a slight move in that low pressure. It can open up and weaken. But hope you guys enjoyed the video, and bye, guys.